Come on, come on, come on in the room. I know the song says deliver me, but how many of you been through some things that you cried out, God, deliver me? Y'all, a lot of us know Leandra's story. We don't know what she's been through. We don't know why she does what she does or why she fights the fight she has, but we know her voice is anointed. See, some of us, we've been through some things, and it came from what we're talking about today. Some hidden things, and people only see our outward actions. But y'all, let me tell you something. God is too good to you and to me. So y'all, I'm excited about tonight. Y'all, we back Therapy Tuesdays. Y'all, it's the brother-sister duo, and y'all, we bringing it to your house, your car, your job, wherever you at. It don't even matter. Just put your earphones on. Matter of fact, do me a favor, like it, share it, send it to somebody, because I'm telling you, we're about to give some tools tonight, and it's gonna be healing tonight. I felt the healing all day. So let me tell you, tonight is going to be a night. Last segment we talked about, that brother sister bond, because y'all know Janae, that's my sister. So we're bridging the church and the couch, because y'all, I'm a big guy, so I need a big couch. But sometimes you need a big couch so you can release some big things that's been hidden, right? It's been in the closet. It's been in your heart. You've been shaken by some big things in your life. So tonight we want to help you, because sometimes it starts at home. Woo. Yeah, you heard me. It starts at home. Home may be your immediate family, your extended family, but it starts at home. There's some things that some of us have experienced in our life, and it started at home. So tonight we want to help you. We want to help you. What is hidden in the closet? Exposing some things, bringing some things out. So y'all know how we do it. We're gonna get a little improv, from the jump, and we're gonna talk about some things. So y'all, I'm gonna bring Janae to the stage. Y'all give us some hand claps, give us some love, y'all. This is a hard-working mom, wife, boss, CEO. She a sister. Look, she let me vent when I need to vent, but she tell me, I'm not your therapist, sir. I know you're not, but y'all, guess what? I'm grateful that I have her. So we're excited to bring some things to you all on tonight. So Janae, girl, come on up here and talk to the people.
Good night. Good night. All right. So
Not
where we
good
gonna
night.
go
I
to?
ain't ready to go to sleep yet. Not good night. I'm ready to be up. I'm live. You hear me, girl? I'm live.
Well, good day. Good day. All right. So where we gonna start? You gonna ask me some questions? What we starting
I
tonight?
was the last time. I'm gonna let you. Ladies first.
Ooh. Oh, you
Ladies.
put me on the spot.
Yes,
Okay.
ladies first.
Um.
But what we talking about tonight? I'm gonna let you do it. This your thing.
Okay, yeah, okay. Well, then well, today we're talking about what's all in the closet, bringing out the hidden abuse and silence of trauma in the family. I think we came up with this topic together, kind of talking about our own family, and in private, and discovering that we all got some stuff in the closet that we don't deal with, we tolerate, and we wonder why we show up in adulthood the way that we do. But it's not until you have those conversations to really reflect on what actually is in your closet that you can begin to do the work, so you're not repeating the cycles and the thing that your trauma gave you. I think just starting out, being put on the spot, the first place I would like to start is for you.
Uh-oh. All right, let's go. I'm ready.
um I'll keep it very simple. What are some of your coping strategies right now when you realize that maybe one of your pain points or your triggers is coming from childhood trauma or some of that stuff that's been in your closet? What are your go-to coping mechanisms?
The water and distance. The water is calming, so it helps me to evaluate what's going on in my heart, and also to release it, because we all have to release some things in a certain way. Some people do it through, sports, alcohol, sex. People use a lot of different things to release, right? Mine is the water. I love going to the water. It's therapeutic for me, and guess what? The water don't talk back. but the waves are refreshing to me to release something to it, because for me, as the waves come, I give it something, and as it goes away, it takes it away. And even though I may still be dealing with it, that is something that helps me, being close to the water. That's one way. So go ahead. Yeah, I ain't gonna give all the secrets.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll jump right in unless you want to ask me a question.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I got a question.
Okay.
But since we talking about what's in the closet, how long did it take you to open your door? Woo, right there.
How long did it take me to open my door? That's a loaded question
I'm
because
telling
now
you.
I gotta think on when I open my door. I think my door opened when I felt safe. So it's not a matter of how long. I guess the question would be, when did I first meet a safe person to where I could open my door? I would say I distinctively remember some people in college being the safe spaces for me to finally open my door. So I would say young adulthood. Um, but honestly, outside of that, I really didn't meet too many people that I would label as safe. I had people who were safe enough for like my academic woes, or somebody who was safe enough for growing pains, but I had not found someone who was safe enough for the things in the closet. Because the thing about the stuff in the closet, you got to find people that really love you and accept you, because they'll judge you.
I was
And the shame and guilt that that could bring will make you stay in the closet and not open it. So I would say I had my first encounter with someone who was safe to open up in college.
okay. So college was your first safe place. Let's see. Let me answer my own question. I would say my first safe place was probably college as well. Actually, not. That was a story. It was after college. Now think about it, because I held a lot of stuff on until my mid 20s. So I would say probably, uh, yeah, like 25, 26. Like that's took me a minute to really release some things. Granted, I talked about them, but I don't think I released them. I really didn't go
Yeah.
into the depth that needed to be. So yeah.
And I think I think it's interesting that like it's around young adulthood where you kind of come out, because sometimes you don't know that it was toxic or not healthy or traumatic until you can get out of the environment, develop a little bit, and then reflect. So we would have not been able to tell that we were in the closet, because the closet is all we knew until we stepped out of it. So I think that's a part of I think while we come out in adulthood, when we start to think for ourselves and develop autonomy.
Okay. And I just got a question, but
Oh,
I'm gonna wait on this question because it's probably part of your presentation anyway.
okay,
But matter of fact, I'm gonna just throw it out there. Why not? So,
okay.
how was it for you coming or expressing some things in the closet with some people that are still active in your life?
Oh, I'm wise. Everybody who are active in my life can't handle what's in my closet.
Ooh,
You know, wisdom is
snap
knowing what to do when. Like,
on that.
yeah, I'm not going to go to Lowe's looking for makeup. Like, if you can't be a safe space and support me, then it would not be wise for me to open up about the things that are in my closet. So I'm wise. So everybody in my life right now can't handle it. I have my safe go-to people who and I'm digressing just a little bit. I saw a friend share with me on social media. She in the video basically said that everybody doesn't have the grace to tolerate you.
Mm,
Everybody doesn't have the grace to tolerate your trauma, and that I can't unhear it. And that's just it. You know, be very aware of the people in your life that have the grace to tolerate you. That's everything about you. That's the stuff in your closet. That's your current presentation. But find people who have the grace for you.
okay. I like it. That's a good place to go ahead and get started. Well, I'm gonna let you.
Oh,
Bro, I might pop in on you a couple times if you start
okay.
something good. I might get excited.
All right. So we start what's in your closet, bringing out the hidden abuse and silent trauma. Again, we're just bridging the couch. We're the bridge between the church and the couch. You can have a therapist, a pastor. You can pray and meditate at the same time. Some recommendations for success. Please remain present. I know you might be cooking. It's evening time. You're winding down, but stay present. You might miss something good. Let's have a good conversation. Text your information if you have a question. If you're brave enough, put it right in the chat. I'm looking at it right now as I talk. I added this new one. This does not replace psychotherapy or crisis stabilization. This is healing through discussion. But if you're having a serious mental health condition or overwhelming symptom, this won't be a replacement for that. Take notes so you don't forget what's useful. You can even journal if you want to. The trigger warning is very loud tonight. I'm going to talk about some heavy things. If you feel overwhelmed, please take a break. If you got to cry, cry. If you need a cool drink of water, go get a cool drink of water. But don't sit and suffer in silence. Do something to help yourself. Um, just to let you know, I will be talking about sexual abuse. So if you know that you're sensitive to that, this may be one that you may not need to watch right now. Maybe watch it, watch the replay and watch it with some support. My main objective is to explore how generational silence around trauma has shaped the emotional well being, identity, and relationships of Black individuals, while empowering you guys to begin naming, challenging, and healing what's been hidden. So we are going to bring out what's in hiding so we can begin to work on it. So I have a deep opening question. If you're brave enough, you can put it in the chat. If not, just reflect on the question. It says, what did you bury to keep your family together? When I reflect on silence and silence in the family, the main objective is usually, it's like the protection of privacy. And it's almost like the protection of the family unit would supersede the actual pain that an individual might be experiencing. So oftentimes, if you had individual pain, you had to bury it if that meant togetherness. And if you really reflect on that even deeper, think about slavery. Think about how families were ripped apart and how an over attachment or just an intense need to keep the family together may have derived from the trauma of always being ripped apart. So it didn't matter. So pretty much it's a luxury to deal with the emotional stuff if you're trying to just keep the family together, because that has been passed down through transgenerational trauma. So that's just something to think about. So what did you bury to keep the family together? Just think on that. If you're brave enough, put it in the chat. So what's really in your closet? Here are some of the things that you may have in your closet. You might know someone else in your closet. Maybe you've had some of these things in your closet, but you haven't been brave enough to say them out loud. I'm going to say them out loud for you. Incestuous sexual abuse. So that's sexual abuse by cousins, uncles, family, aunts. And I want to point out, sexual abuse in the family is just not the male family members. It's also the female family members. And I always like to bring that out because we tend to stereotype the abusers in our family. But non-protection from known predators. Someone has a tendency to violate people, but you don't protect your young or yourself from it. Addiction masked as just a drink or two. Oh, they just drinking, it's for fun, but really it is substance dependency, it's addiction. Mental illness labeled as bad nerves or moodiness. Some of our grandparents, our aunts, who were very moody and always irritable, they were really clinically depressed, but they always said they got bad nerves. No, you need to see a therapist. That's more than bad nerves. Parents who were emotionally unavailable or abusive. Remember, emotions are a luxury when you're trying to survive. So a lot of us were raised by living ghosts. They were not expressive. They did not model emotional expression. We learned about emotions from school. We did not get it at home. They were unavailable. Maybe they had to work. Some of us were latchkey kids. And some of them were abusive. Maybe they were abused. So that's the only parenting style they knew. And I want to point out that abuse can be more than just sexual. It could be emotional. It could be physical. It could be mental. Sibling rivalry rooted in favoritism or colorism. Yes. I have seen this too in my family. The colorism piece, whereby some relatives who were darker were treated different, or other relatives who were a little bit more lighter skinned were treated a certain way. I've seen it in my own family. So sibling rivalry rooted in favoritism and colorism, that is something we do not talk about, but it is very prevalent. Financial manipulation and silence about poverty. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that said, we didn't know we were poor. We didn't know we were poor. And I'm curious, why didn't you know you were poor? You guys, it was like 9 of you guys in a 1-bedroom home. Everybody slept on the floor. Your parents often worked multiple jobs, but it still wasn't enough. And it just made me think, maybe you didn't know you were poor because your parents didn't talk to you about much of anything, not just your living condition, but much of anything. Rejection of identity. This is really big, especially when you have people who are getting involved in some of those identity roles that are not as accepted in the Black community. For example, you may have someone who's interested in being an astronaut, or and the family kind of shuts it down. Like, why you want to do that? Because it's so far fetched. It doesn't seem attainable. So we really don't support career paths that are not the traditional standard. I'm going to call it Black eyes career path. So sometimes the rejection of identity could be something in the closet. You can't even be who you really want to be in your family out of fear of them picking on you, or calling you a nerd or something else. Parents who stayed together for the kids but broke the kids anyway. Listen, I always say this to my couples. They want to stay together for the kids. And we look at how the kids are being impacted. The kids are going to be better off if you guys are not together. But again, that transgenerational trauma of we got to stay together because we were always ripped apart sometimes keeps people longer in toxic scenarios longer than they need to be. Unacknowledged grief from miscarriages, death, or loss. We do not process grief. We just move on. We so focused on being strong, we're not focused on feeling. A lot of us have latent responses to grief. You have people who've been deceased for years and will grieve in year 5 because we were too busy trying to be strong, trying to survive, trying to keep it together. Childhood parentification, being the adult too soon. That's where we don't allow children to be children. I have read some research and went to a few trainings, and there's some research out there that suggests that people of color, we don't allow our children to make a lot of noise. They have to sit still. They're not allowed to run around. We don't allow our children to be children. Why? Because we're too busy trying to survive. Running around and playing is a luxury. You better get to school, get your lessons so you can get a job so you don't have to struggle. Generational jealousy or trauma reenactment. That is another one. So just passing off jealousy, modeling jealousy. And it could be jealousy of how someone looks, the things they have, where they live, and things of that nature. So these are some of the things that are in people's closet. Not everything. I know there's some things I miss, but these are some things that we don't like to talk about because they're heavy, they're uncomfortable. And I think if you have to say them out loud, a lot of us feel like maybe we're talking bad about our families. But your truth is not gossip. You're not gossiping about your family. You're not starting rumors. This is your truth. And if you're somebody who has a hard time being honest about what you've been through because you feel like you're betraying your family, you're doing exactly what you were programmed to do. Kind of like that what goes on in his house stays in his house thing. Silence becomes security. So when you're unsilenced, you feel insecure. And that's the exact way that we were raised. So why we didn't talk and why it made sense at the time. I'm going to go into why we don't talk. There's some good reasons for silence, but I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And I put that in here because I want to validate you guys. Like, we're not terrible because we're silent. We're not bad people. We are just simply trying to survive, and have been for many, many, many years. So I don't want anybody to leave here ashamed because they feel like, man, my mom or my dad was silent and caused all this trauma for me. We don't want to blame anybody. We want to acknowledge why it happened. And it was for good reason. So some cultural survival strategies that keep us silent. There were some things in our culture that kept us silent. Remember, I said silence equals security. So what happens in his house stays in his house. That means that our personal privacy is more important than your personal pain. Because we got to survive. So protecting the family name over individual pain. We don't want people in the streets talking about us, because then if they talk about us, we're not going to have no community connections, which could impact some of our resources or our support. Distrust of systems. So protective service agencies, police agencies, school and medical agencies, we just didn't trust them. Church over therapy. Most of us were taught to take it to the Lord in prayer, not take it to a therapist or not talk about your feelings. Pray about it. God can work everything out. And then survival first, healing later. But here's the thing. it was survival only. A lot of us have not gone back to the healing later part. So we got to work on the healing later. But these are some cultural and survival strategies that have kept us silent. I want to point out that inaction is synonymous to silence.
Oh,
Um,
I'm coming because
uh-huh.
I just got some tea. Now,
Okay.
you just said something that was really powerful, which was what happens in the house stays in the house. And I don't think people realize how damaging those few words really are. And I just got a text like, oh my gosh, that was me. And so as Janae said, we want to validate you because some of us, you have had to suffer for many years because of what happens in the house and you can't speak. And so one thing we want to do is acknowledge the things that you've been through today. That your voice does matter. That everything that you went through, we are glad that you survived it because you're still here. And so we just want you to know that, what happened, it wasn't your fault. It wasn't something that you did to make it happen. And so we just want you to, y'all, when you get finished from here, that you will get some healing. But no, hey, that phrase, if you're saying it to your kids, it could be something simple about your boyfriend, what kind of money you got. Be mindful of the words that you speak because it can internalize in a different way. All right, y'all, I'm going. I'm gonna let you do your thing.
Hey, you moving ahead, but I like it. You setting me up. So let's jump back into silence. Being synonymous to inaction. So silence and inaction both allow harm to continue. Um, that's why speaking up is important because speaking up is symbolic of a stop sign. It stops the thing that's causing harm. When you're silent or you don't move with action, the thing that causes harm continues. And here's the crazy thing about that. The thing that causes harm, not only does it continue, but now it becomes a family heirloom. So now not only are you passing down DNA and big heads and facial features, but now you're passing down harm. Here, and along with my DNA, here is emotional internalization. Here's some silence for you. And then guess what happens when we have children after it's been passed down to us? Then we pass it down. And at some point, we got to stop that pattern because we are breeding generation after generation of people who are emotionally unintelligent, people who internalize everything, people who implode, people who cannot talk about feelings. And even when they talk about it, they feel so uncomfortable and it's just too vulnerable for them. So we need to really work on stopping the harm so that way we're not passing it on. Choosing to do nothing says this is okay to the next generation. Remember, they're learning from us. And if our actions or our silence teaches, oh, it's okay if someone violates you like that, they don't know it's wrong. If we're doing things that are toxic without correcting it, the younger generations that are watching us have no idea that it's wrong. They don't know. So they begin to replicate it and duplicate it and feel like it's okay. And oftentimes in therapy, I'm really teaching people how to unlearn and relearn, which is extremely challenging because it becomes a part of their identity. So I'm really teaching people how to etch away the identity they know and rebuild a new one. And it's very hard, extremely hard. We think we're keeping the peace, but we're actually passing down pain. If you think that you're keeping the peace by not doing anything about a troubling scenario or keeping silence, it's not real. It's not peace. It is an illusion of peace. Because the thing about peace is an authentic, long-lasting, sustaining sense of just calm. But if it keeps resurfacing and sometimes it magnifies, that's not peace. That's pain. When we don't speak, we normalize dysfunction. We say it's okay to be punched. It's okay to be sexually abused. It's okay to stay in a relationship with someone who's having multiple affairs. We teach that it's okay to mask your mental health symptoms as moodiness or bad nerves. We teach that it's okay not to have healthy relationships. We teach it's okay to gossip. We teach sometimes, unfortunately, it's okay to physically violate people's bodies. When we don't act, we reinforce trauma cycles. So it's just cycle after cycle after cycle. And at some point, you got to say, I'm not participating in this. And you got to get off of the roller coaster. So silence is an action. So your inability to move with action is just as bad as being silent. That's the point I wanted to make there. The good in silence. This is what I wanted to honor. I wanted to validate us. We're not being silent because we just want to be silent. We're not purposefully replicating trauma cycles. We're not purposefully passing things off. I truly believe that we're all doing the best we can. Well, why do we keep silent? Well, it gives us a sense of control and chaos. Sometimes we are overwhelmed. Sometimes the generations before us have been extremely overwhelmed. And it's nothing that can be said to ease that. It's nothing that can be done. When you think about Jim Crow and slavery and socialism and all those isms, you were pretty much taught to be silenced by the chaos that was going on around you. What power did you have, or what power did you feel like you have? So sometimes being quiet is the only source of power that you have. It helped keep peace in unsafe environments. Sometimes being silent kept you from being beat. If you were in a physically abusive family, or beat in public, if you're talking about racial things, avoided more conflict or punishment. Sometimes being quiet kept you from getting whipped. Like I particularly go to children. Like one thing that I'm learning with my own children is to give them a voice, making sure that when they speak up to me, I'm not always labeling it as disrespect. An example of that now is my children have the right to say no. They can say no to adults. There's a way to do it. I try to have them balance out respect and having a voice. Like they can say no. Think about this. If you teach your children that they can't say no, then what will they continue not being able to say no to? So you got to be very careful about that. Silence felt like strength because you were able to keep it moving and you didn't break down. Well, you didn't break down on the outside, but guess what? You were breaking down on the inside. And silence was good because it bonded family through unspoken rules. Like you knew what not to say and what to say. All you had to do is give an eye. I know even now my mom can sometimes give me an eye. I know exactly what she's saying. But so sometimes it's a source of bonding. So there was some good that came from silence. It wasn't all bad. What is the long-term impact of being silent? I think you guys know some of these, but generation of voiceless women. How many of you, if you sit with yourself, you would say, I've been a voiceless woman. There have been times in my life where I should have spoke up more. I should have said this. I should have stopped that. But I just didn't have the skills to do that. Or I didn't know where to start, or I didn't have the words. It's probably learned behavior. I will say in my family, there has been generations of voiceless women, and I had to do the work to make sure that I speak up and I show up for myself, even if it's hard, even if I need somebody to help me to do it. Also, it creates generations of guarded men who suppress their emotions, men who don't want to express their feelings. Complicated family members with complicated pain. Think about this. Your most difficult family members, usually the ones that call themselves the black sheep, they probably have the most pain. They probably have the most stuff in their closet. And I just want you to hear me out. Move with compassion and empathy for them. I know it's so easy to say they're overwhelming. I don't want to deal with them. Now, I'm not saying let them close to you to now where you have that vicarious type of stress happening. But be empathetic and be compassionate. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Ask yourself, well, what has happened to you where you have to show up in the world this way? They probably have a lot of complicated pain, a lot of silent stuff, a lot of things they haven't been able to work through. The long-term effect of silence is secrets that are being passed down like heirlooms. Yes. I kind of had a little epiphany. It's like a secret is something that is really something you can't touch, but it's still passed down. You're not even really saying much, but it's still passed down. That lets you know the power of secrets. Like you think nobody knows. Everybody knows the secret that you're not saying. And here's my thing. If everybody's still going to know, so the very thing you're trying to prevent is still happening anyway, you might as well share it, get some healing, and get it out of hiding. Anger, with no root or depression with no name. Sometimes we are depressed and we don't know why because of all the stuff that's in the closet that we haven't faced. I can't tell you how many people sit on my couch and they tell me their life story and they're like, I'm fine. I'm like, wait a minute. No, you're not fine. I just did a depression assessment and it's out of the roof. Let me point out to you what's not fine. Unfortunately, when things are like suppressed or deep in the closet and you don't deal with them, you don't even know that that's what's causing your depression because you associate it with culture and identity. Oh, I was taught not to talk about my feelings. I never even considered that that might be why I'm depressed. Absolutely, you could be depressed because of the things that you're suppressing. That's the exact reason why therapy works because it gives you a safe space to kind of release. It's always going to be relieving and healing to get to just get it out. You don't even have to have a solution. It's incredibly healing to just talk about what you've experienced without even moving toward a solution. Children punish for the trauma no one talks about.
Hold on 1 second, because you just said that you can't rush past that right. I need you to say that again. Did you just say you can be in depression because of what you're suppressing? Now, girl, I'm gonna preach that one day. I don't know when, but I like that. I think people, you got to go just a little bit, just a couple of minutes on that, because sometimes we as people don't realize that the things that we have put away from us, right? We've put it in the closet, or we've put it in the bag, we put it in the barrel, and you don't realize because you're not dealing, you're not talking, or you're not just getting it out. Even if it's writing, if you don't want to tell nobody, but you have to get it out. Can you just give a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. So any feeling that you have is a messenger. It's trying to send a message to you. But when you suppress those feelings, you don't get access to those messages. So you're sad and depressed, but it's suppressed, so you don't have access to what's causing the depression. So you're not dealing with it. And if you're not dealing with it, it just compounds and compounds and grows and grows and grows. But when you get to sit and really reflect, you can say, I'm really angry about how my mom treated me or my dad or whomever or whatever. And I never really honored that. That made me angry. It made me sad. It made me sad because it made me feel unloved. Like you get to really process that stuff and bring it up and then realize, I'm allowed to be sad because I felt unloved in childhood. I can be sad because of that. I'm allowed to. And then move toward, well, what can I do about it now? The trauma wasn't my fault, but the healing is my responsibility. But when you suppress it, you don't get to all that information. You don't realize that you're sad because of something in your childhood. You don't get to the point of validating that feeling. You don't get to the point of even moving toward a solution. You would just fester in it. You would just be depressed. You'll be overwhelmed. And when you think about it being a long-term thing, I call it being all pressed down. You repress, oppress, suppress, depress. Life is just pressing you all down, and you can't see your way out of it because you don't even know what's holding you down. And you're correct, Fatal Queen 74 Butler. You said sometimes people don't know what they're suppressing. Absolutely. You don't even know that you don't know. Again, because it's identity, it's culture. I can't imagine how many things you're doing in adulthood that you think are totally okay, are totally healthy for you, and you're simply doing it because you were taught it or you saw somebody you love doing it. You never questioned why, you never challenged it, you never tried to change it. You just jump right on into life doing what you know best. And if you think about it, most of us live our lives based on our experiences or our education.
Now, why are you talking about that? Because I just got to throw this in here right quick. So, because I hear somebody saying, well, what about the Bible? It says, to cast all my cares on him. How can you cast the care on him if you don't know what care to cast on him? So you're saying, I'm giving God my everything. I'm giving God all of my pain, but have you acknowledged what pain you need to give God and what pain happened for you to succeed or move forward? Because when you suppress everything, you can't give it to God because you don't know what to give to God. Why? Because you buried it. So how can you know what it is if it's buried? Because you can't see it.
And here's another thing. Sometimes you're so depressed, you don't even want to get to God. Sometimes I've seen people so depressed they don't want to bathe, they don't want to get up, they don't have any motivation. you're not reading your Bible, you're not getting to your word, you're not going to church when you're like that. Let's be realistic. Um, I saw someone
Bedside
in pain.
Baptist. You know what
Hmm.
I'm talking about? I say bedside Baptist. You don't want to see nobody. You want to go. You turn it on, and then you fall asleep.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then it becomes a cycle. Like, why get up and show up? I've been doing this for so long. Now you're in a rut. So, yes, suppressing your feelings can cause depression and so many other things as well. Um, when we don't talk about it, it talks through us. Listen, sometimes you got to deal with you. Like you guys said, we don't realize we're suppressing it, we don't realize what's in our closet. But if you can't maintain employment, if you can't maintain relationships, so you keep losing friends, or every time you get in a romantic relationship it ends abruptly, you're always angry all the time, every time there's something going on you're complaining about it, you really do feel unhappy, you're masking, in public you're happy-go-lucky but at home you're falling apart. Listen, what you don't talk about will talk through you. We see that. You see that. You feel that. So you can suppress, you can keep it in your closet. It will bubble up. It will manifest. It will show up in some capacity in your life. It might be in your parenting, it might be at work, it might be in your relationships, but it is going to show up. And don't close your eyes to the cause of your own suffering. When you notice a pattern in your life, or when you notice you want to be a better version of yourself, don't ignore that. For me personally, I did notice about 2 years ago that I was very negative all the time. And I wasn't negative in like public situations and with other people. I was more negative like with people who were very close to me, more specifically my husband. I know I felt safe with him, but then I had to evaluate my family. I noticed how much my mom worried. I noticed how much my grandmother was such a worrier. And when I say negative, I mean more worryation, just very worried about things. And I was like, man, I don't want to be like that. And I really had to work to trying to see the bright side of things, trying to be more positive. But I learned it from them. They passed it right on to me. Um, so it's really important to deal with yourself, because what you don't talk about, it will shine bright right through you. So how does silence shape us as adults? Let's see. Maybe you're an adult who's struggling to say no. You can't speak up for yourself. Silence will teach you how to remain silent. You will remain silent throughout all areas of your life. Over functioning or shutting down in relationships. Maybe you're somebody who do too much. Maybe you're codependent and you buy people's love, or you try to give people into loving you. Maybe you are avoiding and you shut down completely when things get a little overwhelming. Um, Maybe you're tolerating dysfunction because it's not that bad. I'm just here to let you know that dysfunction is bad. There's a quote: if you drink a little bit of poison, are you poisoned? Absolutely. Dysfunction is never healthy. Just because you're strong enough to tolerate it doesn't mean you should. Just because mom tolerated and maybe you're trying to live up to her standards or what she modeled for you doesn't mean you have to. Sometimes we have to be better than the people that we look up to. Um, Feeling unsafe and vulnerability. So being authentically emotionally open feels unsafe. So really, it feels safer for you to mask and pretend. It's better than authenticity and genuineness when it comes to how you feel. Confusing trauma bonding with love. So you may confuse a shared traumatic experience with love. You may confuse their gift giving with love. You may confuse their words of affirmation with love. And here's another thing: they're affirming you with words, but their action are doing the opposite. So they say they love you, but they're so emotionally and maybe even physically abusive. So that feels like love. Why? Because you were in a family unit that could affirm you verbally, but maybe were physically abusive or abusive in other ways as well. So you sometimes learn that. Um, Now, family patterns reinforced by silence. So normalizing toxic behavior. That's just how he is. Like, it's fine. It's never fine for people to be toxic. Obviously, people are toxic for their own reasons, but you don't have to stick around and figure out why. You don't have to be someone's rehabilitation center. I know sometimes God does call people to be his example on earth. and help people get through really tough times. But he did not call you to be that for 100% of the people in your life. And I'm pretty sure there's somebody listening to my voice who tries to show up for everybody every way they can in all spaces, and you burn out. And you burn out because that is not your calling. That is not what God wants you to do. He does not want you burn out and showing up for toxic people or people who are in need all the time. Family patterns look like shaming emotional expression. This is a really big one. I really want you to lean in for this one. Shaming emotional expression. Under no circumstance should we make people feel bad for feeling or make people feel bad for expressing their feelings. We got to learn to hold space for people. If they're crying, we got to stop telling people to stop crying. I mean, I've seen circumstances where people are literally grieving the loss of a loved one, and we're trying to make them stop crying. And I get it. Watching someone else be emotional can be overwhelming, but really work on not being overwhelmed by other people's emotional expression. And you might ask the question, well, why in the world am I getting overwhelmed by other people's emotional expression? Because you lived in a family full of people who suppress theirs and you've never experienced it. So you're literally in kindergarten watching people express emotions. Keep practicing, keep sitting with that. Maybe even journal about why is it so uncomfortable. Maybe you feel like you need to do something about it because you need to make it stop because you're not used to it. But it's human. It's human to cry. It's human to get angry. It's human to be happy. Let's get out of the habit of trying to change the way people feel. Let's be okay with how they show up in that space. My theory is it really doesn't matter how you're feeling, meaning I'm not going to try to change it. All I care about is what you're doing when you're feeling. As long as you're not beating somebody up, breaking a law, or being sinful, express that feeling. Tell people you're angry. Sometimes avoiding conflict at all costs. These are my people who don't like confrontation. Listen, avoiding confrontation will put you in a lot of unfortunate situations. You will end up caring for people longer than you need to. You will keep people in your life longer than you need to. You will waste a lot of time and money if you are somebody who does not like confrontation. Well, you might be asking, well, why don't I like confrontation? Well, when you're in a family full of people who never confronted anything, they moved around in silence, they taught you that confrontation was bad. Not because they said it was bad. It was one of those silent messages that got passed. Confronting people is bad. And I get it. Sometimes confrontation can be a little scary. You don't know how people are going to react to it, but we got to change the language. It's not confrontation, it's self-advocacy. If you don't speak up for yourself, then you give permission for what's happening to you to continue to happen. So you got to advocate for yourself. You're not being confrontational in the sense that you're looking for a fight or you're looking to cause problems. You are advocating for yourself because you want the pain to stop, because you don't want to pass that pain on. You don't want that pain to make you into something who you're not, or someone who you're not, make you more angry and more irritable. Family patterns reinforced by silence, labeling truth tellers as disrespectful. Yes, I don't know how many of you have a family member that always tells the truth and don't nobody like them. We don't want to hear the truth. Now, I will say this family member who liked to tell the truth got to balance truth telling with who the hearer. Like I always say this, if the person who you're talking to can't receive your message, then what you're doing is self-serving. It's okay to tell the truth, but sometimes people are just not quite ready. So you got to be careful and be mindful of how you package it. But maybe you have a family member who does tell the truth. Maybe they don't mean any harm, but the family don't like them and they're labeled as disrespectful. This is true also with children. Children don't get allowed. They're not allowed to tell the truth, even if it hurts, without being labeled as disrespectful. I remember getting popped in the mouth a few times for saying some things about my stepdad that I shouldn't have said. But I said it, and I got whacked in the mouth. And right then in that moment, I was taught, don't tell the truth about how you feel about adults because you get slapped in the mouth, right? Thankfully, that didn't damage me completely and silence me, but maybe another kid who was in a similar situation has gone silent. Keeping secrets for the kids, but the kids always know. And I talked about this earlier. The kids know. You're not keeping no secret. You think it's because remember, whatever you don't speak about will speak through you. The kids know the secrets. So all this tiptoeing and secret keeping that you're doing, or you think you're doing behind everybody's back, they know. So if you're going to keep a secret and it's still going to be known, you might as well speak about it and do something about it, and create a plan for healing instead of silence.
You know, I got to jump in on that.
Okay.
So you said not secret keeping. Now, how would you say that in the aspect of, you know, kids know, like parents that might be separating? You know, it's like you can tell we're in a different household now, but it hasn't been talked about because of the hurt or the pain that, you know, one parent may have. And then you may see the other parent, you know, one parent may start to entertain somebody because they've decided, but it's like the kids are, in a sense, out the loop, but they're in the loop because they see what's going on. What would you give to that?
Authenticity and genuineness. I don't know why we feel like kids can't handle things. Having an authentic, age appropriate conversation about the truth is always okay. Um, Mommy and daddy are separating. We're still trying to work things out. Mommy is seeing someone new. You may not be introduced to them right now, but that is what's happening. Now, here's the thing, this is going to come out anyway, right? So I don't understand why we feel like prolonging it makes it better or more emotionally tolerant for the child. When you really think about it, when they have to find out about it in secret, they don't get any support. They don't get anybody to talk about it. They internalize it. And that's where we get those adults that can't express their feelings, because every experience they've had, they had to deal with on their own because nobody talked to them about it. Everybody thought they were too young to understand. Children understand, they do. And if they need a space to process their emotions, then get a therapist or make a safe space where they can actually talk to you about it. But I will never advocate for concealing facts from children because of the idea that they may be too young to handle it. Now, granted, there are some topics that may need to be modified for age appropriateness, but I don't think silence is the answer.
So would you add to that, like with that, that is helpful so it doesn't allow them to internalize that, oh, this is my fault, or because maybe they had
Yes.
an accident or something broke, oh, I'm the reason why mommy and daddy are now separated, you know, because a lot of times that simple communication helps them to be healthy and better adults, you know, or growing adolescents, as well as it helps them to cope and to problem solve in life, because a lot of times we will try to shield our children for so much because we don't want them to go through the pain we went through and experience things, but sometimes we end up hurting them more by trying to close them off from the realities of life.
That's so true. And sometimes we think that the pain we are experiencing is because of the event. So really what we're doing is we're projecting our pain on our children based on our lens, right? But they have their own identity, they have their own power. They may see it from a totally different lens. And I want to go along the line of what you said, what children will blame themselves. That's exactly how the child mind is wired. I went to a training where they shared that children, even when people die around them, they blame themselves. Children try to make sense of things, and because they don't have a lot of exposure, they usually connect it to it being something they did. That's why it's so important to talk to children. Think about your own journey as a child. How much stuff based on your childhood, or maybe actually when you were in childhood, did you believe was your fault? Think about that. Probably a lot, because children's minds are wired to put the blame on themselves. That's why talking to children is so important. So you need to tell them it's not your fault. And in fact, I said be authentic. You need to say it was my fault. Daddy did something he shouldn't have done. Mommy did something she shouldn't have done. We grew apart. We don't like each other as much as we used to. We love each other, but we just don't like each other. Be honest. That's that emotional vulnerability I was talking about. But that is learned. And a lot of times we're not taught to be that vulnerable because everybody is so silent. So you might have to model that for the very first time without having any examples. You just got to be raw and honest and authentic. And it's going to be hard.
And this just dropped in my spirit, so I'm gonna say, because I feel feel that. You know, it's also a biblical principle in Proverbs that tells us to train the child up in the way that they should go, so that when they grow old, they will never depart. So part of that is also us as parents and adults being accountable to what's going on in our life, so that way as they get older, they can be accountable. Because guess what? When we keep secrets and they keep secrets, all they're doing is what we train them to do, which is keep secrets. On the same aspect, we have to see that, okay, what if you don't know, right? So you got to get tools to kind of, okay, you know, I didn't like this. Let me try this differently, because I know what I felt like being in silence or not having a voice. Is that how I want my child to feel or my daughter to feel? So I said, you can talk to me. I don't care. I tell her, the only thing, you can't cuss at me. You can't do nothing. Like, I'm your dad. I ain't your bro. I ain't your friend. But you can talk. Those are my guidelines. Because, you know, Noah should get the bro. I said, I ain't your bro. I ain't your bro. You can talk, but I ain't your bro. Why? Because I always want her to understand, as free as you are to speak, there's still a level of respect you have to maintain, because I'm your father always. You always gonna be my baby, even though she don't like that. It's the truth. However, I try to help her in avenues that I know when I was younger, college, all that, because I didn't help and deal with my emotions properly. You know, I tell her some sort of, hey, dad had anger problem in college. I just, you know, and because I see certain things, I say, hey, I don't want you to go down this path. And as parents, you ain't got to give them all the details, but sometimes a little tea will help them to open up to you. Because if they only see you as mom and daddy, we're so glorious to them, right? Granted, they have the issues with us, but they never see the issues that got us to mom and dad that we had to overcome. And I think it's been big for me in parenting, like talking about, hey, this is where daddy fell at. Yep, the past, all that. Yep, I know what you see, but this is where I've been.
Yeah. I want to bring up another point. You just triggered a thought inside of me. It's also important to not be silent, because when you go silent, it creates the illusion to your children that you're perfect, like you don't make mistakes. And when they get old enough to really see you for who you are, and they're like, man, this version of you that you try to show me by being silent and not letting me see your scars, you're an imposter. You try to raise me to be something you're not even yourself. That could create a rift, right? So being authentic and genuine really helps your children to see that you're human. It gives them permission to make mistakes. It gives them permission to have flaws. Nobody is flawless. So trying to go silent because you don't really want the world, including your children, to know the things that are in your closet, you might as well bring them up, because it's going to cause problems in the long run. They're going to see you as an imposter. All right. So you don't owe silence your loyalty anymore. We do not have to be loyal to silence. Silence served slaves. We are not slaves right now. Silence served maybe a few generations ahead of us that lived through Jim Crow. Silence served those who actually were violated for speaking up in tremendous ways. But we no longer have to be loyal to silence anymore. We don't need this level of surviving in today's society. You might need it in your own unique situation. And if you are in a situation where your safety equals your silence, I want to encourage you to try to work really hard to get out of that environment. So here's what we've been waiting for. How in the world do you unsilence yourself? Mom and dad and grandma, they're not going to come unsilence you. God himself is not going to swoop down and unsilence you. You're going to have to do the work. I'm going to say this. You can journal or write. I want you to write down your truths, the truths you've never said out loud. Write them down. Things that are in your closet that you maybe have never uttered, you have not wanted to think about, write them all down. Name what happened without minimizing it. I can't tell you how many times people will tell me what they've been through and then say, but my mom was the best mom. But my grandmother was always there for me. But you do not have to put a but on the end of your situation. Put a period on it. This is what I went through. It was painful, period. By honoring your experiences, you're not betraying anybody in your family. Say, I didn't deserve that, and mean it. You did not deserve the things you experienced. You were a victim of your environment, of your subculture, but you did not deserve that. Share with someone safe, a therapist, a support group, a friend, and it might just be a journal for now until you find some safe people. Use affirmations to rewrite your internal script. I think when you write your list of things that are in your closet, you're going to find them attached to some scripts, some internal dialogue that you have. Maybe the internal dialogue is what goes on in this house stays in the house. Maybe you actually believe that. I need you to change that. What goes on this house stays in this house unless it hurts me. Then I'm going to reach out for help. Spin those things, reframe some of those internal dialogues that are keeping you silent and keeping you stuck and keeping you from dealing with the stuff in your closet. Let your voice shake and speak anyway. What am I saying? Allow yourself to feel. You're going to be vulnerable. You may cry. Your voice may be shaky. You may feel like you're not going to get through it, but speak your truth anyway. Speak it. Say it out loud. It might be weird. Say it out loud in the bathroom by yourself in the mirror. Give life to your experiences. You do not have to pretend like it never happened. And I'm going to pause. I see a comment in this, a comment just came through. Yes, my son was 5 when me and his dad separated, and I had that conversation with him, and it honestly made things so much easier. I explained to him that it was not his fault, and mom and dad love him. Absolutely. Tell the truth. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. How to unsilence your children. So, luckily for you, if you're raising kids now, this is a nugget that you're going to have in your bag. If you've already raised children, they got to do the work themselves. But if you still got some little ones in your house, or maybe you have grandchildren, this is something for them. Model truth telling. Learn to tell the truth. One of the things I do, and it's not always easy, but I feel so much easier on the back end. No matter how bad of a mistake I made, no matter how much I misstep, I always tell the truth. I'll be like, look, I missed that deadline. Look, I'm running behind. Look, I didn't meet that mark. It doesn't feel the best initially, but the repercussions on the back end, people trust me. People believe what I say. My children see me doing that. And my hope is that it rubs off on them, because just like we can pass down harm and silence, we can pass down accountability. So maybe they'll speak up and say, yep, I made that mistake. I did that. Apologize when you are wrong. Say sorry to your children. Sometimes I'm a little overstimulated and I'm not as nice to my children. When I notice that, I do apologize to them. And a lot of people might say, well, we're raising kids to be soft. That's one of those little internalized voices that you got to get rid of. Raising emotionally intelligent children is not raising children to be soft. Teaching kids how to get in touch with their feelings, how to talk about their feelings, how to self-advocate, how to show up accountable is raising healthy, whole children. And if you have the idea that children are soft because of it, you are going to raise kids that are internalizing things, that are silent, and that are just recycling harm.
Now, with that's a big thing right there, because there's some people out there that don't believe in apologizing to children. That's a child. You're a child. I'm an adult? What would you say to that person and the impact that not apologizing has on a child?
Mm-hmm. I think apologizing essentially is acknowledgement of a mistake. And you mean to tell me that when you've made a mistake that impacts a child, they don't need to know that you are accountable and you see that you made a mistake? And it goes back to that thing I was talking about earlier. If you don't acknowledge to children that you have made a mistake through an apology, they will blame themselves. And anything that's beyond your control is impossible to be your fault. So how many things are our children blaming themselves for that's impossible to be their fault? Can you imagine the weight of that guilt? You don't even have the cognitive capacity to make sound decisions. But on top of that, now you're blaming yourself because of something your mom actually did, whether it was something in a relationship, in an experience, in the home, maybe outside of the home. But it's really important that we de-guilt our children by being accountable and apologizing. Let them express disagreement respectfully. It's okay for your children to disagree with you. They got to have, my thing is, I want my kids to have a mind of their own. It's okay to disagree with me. You do not have to agree with everything I said. Now, what I will do is, if they disagree, I'm always curious about why. Okay, you don't agree with me? Tell me a little bit more about why you don't agree. I'm always be curious about the way your children think. And think about this. If you give them the space to think for themselves, you're teaching them how to critically think, how to problem solve, how to think through things. We wonder why our children succumb to peer pressure and bullying and things like that. Their critical thinking skills are always suppressed by our parenting styles. We're not raising critical thinkers. We're raising critical doers. So what are they doing? We raise them to critically follow us, and they critically follow their peers as well. If you want your kid to think, then you got to have them practice thinking. And what better way to have them practice thinking by having very goal-driven, open conversations, allowing them to disagree with you, apologizing to them, and so on. Don't confuse respect with silence. Silent children are not always respectful. Silent children are children that are blaming themselves. And when they become of age, they will probably rebel. They will probably resent you. They will probably need family therapy to really deal with their internalized feelings for you. Teach body autonomy early. This is a real good one. Lean in here. You don't have to hug everyone or anyone if you don't want to. This is my recommendation. If you have your own set of values, I don't want to impose mine, but I don't make my children hug people. I don't even make them speak. I encourage them. I'll say hello. If they don't say hello, I don't threaten them or push them, or they'll do it in their own time. And my kids are only 2 and 5. So if they were a little bit older, my expectation might be a little bit different, but we got to give kids space to have body autonomy. If they don't want to hug people, let's not make them. Let's get out of that. I mean, hug them for what? We want them to have the illusion that they're kind. Well, our kids can be kind without hugging everybody, especially if they don't feel comfortable. You never know what your child might have experienced or might sense in a person that keeps them from wanting to hug them. And I would never want to force that into their reality just because I think a hug is kind and I want to raise kind kids. Well, I'm raising kind kids that don't want to hug and they don't have to hug. That's my parenting style right now. Correct behaviors without shaming feelings. Like, it's okay to be mad. Let's talk about it. Try not to make them feel bad for being mad. You can be mad. You can even be mad at me. Just don't disrespect me. Just don't raise your voice. Just don't slam my doors. Be very mad. Find some coping mechanisms outside of property damage and raising your voice, but you're allowed to be mad. Celebrate their voice. When they speak up, say, thank you for sharing with me. I'm proud of you for speaking up. Really validate when they do open their mouth. Create safe spaces at home. If your child finally opens up to you, even if it's a heavy topic, and your reaction is yelling, or you're dismissing them, or you put them on punishment, they're not going to speak again. So sometimes we teach silence, not through modeling, but we teach silence with how we respond to when they speak. So be mindful of how you show up when they speak. If you're yelling at them, dismissing them, or giving them a punishment for speaking their mind, they're never going to speak to you again. And I can't tell you how many parents that come to therapy wanting me to get their kid to talk to them. You got to do the work. Think about the reasons why you don't open up to people, because you don't feel safe. Your children are not talking to you because they don't feel safe to talk to you, because you always yell at them. Even if they say things that are uncomfortable, learn to breathe through those moments. I call it brave listening. Practice brave listening when your children are saying things that are scary and heavy.
And right there on that point, can you address, because some, especially like church, right? People always hug and all that, but some people are uncomfortable. Or something like Noah. Noah does not like to touch people. And so, I'm like, okay, and I said, well, they just speak back, because she's at an age where she understands, but if you don't want to hug me, you ain't got to hug nobody, because she just doesn't like it. And I think sometimes as parents, we can take it as, oh, you're being rude or unkind. But again, as you said, you got to teach that body autonomy for them to like, this isn't comfortable for me, because even though it may be a good environment for us, what we're also teaching is that anytime you're uncomfortable, you need to do what's said.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's something else that for a situation that you need to know, or you don't want them to respond in that way, but we have predicated them to, oh, well, you always need to do this, or well, I told you to hug them, I told you to speak to them. but not asking the questions of why and getting deeper. What would you say to that parent that is the friction with their relationship with their child?
The friction is the child doesn't like hugging, but the parent wants them to hug.
Yes, ma'am.
I would say honor their requests. Ask yourself, why do I want my kid to hug? I think deal with yourself first. And I kind of mentioned one that I think might be it. Well, maybe I want my child to appear kind, so I want them to hug because I want other people to think they're kind. That's just one example. But really search yourself. Why do you want your kids to hug people back? Do you not want them to leave other people hanging? Well, do you want to teach them to hug people even when they don't feel like it, just because it makes other people feel good? So right there, you're teaching them to play into other people's well-being and ignore theirs. So really deal with why you want that. And then if you can find the strength within yourself to adjust your standard, welcome it. Say and it, and then apologize. Say, hey, mom or dad, I didn't realize how much hugging was uncomfortable for you. If you don't feel like hugging, you don't have to. Maybe you can reach what's something that you do feel comfortable doing. So maybe find a compromise. What about a handshake? How do you feel about a handshake? So maybe when people reach out to hug you, maybe you put your hand out for a handshake. Or maybe adapt. Maybe you don't like handshaking or hugging, but what about a fist pump? So just having those conversations, and then understand why they're uncomfortable. They may not be able to articulate it depending on their age, but ask, hey, well, tell me why you don't like hugging, or what happens when you hug. Well, I don't like really being touched. Or the last time I hugged somebody, they kissed my face and their breath was stinking. I didn't like it. You'd be surprised at what kids will tell you. Kids will tell you exactly what the problem is. And then you can understand sometimes, understanding begets tolerance. If you understand why your child doesn't want to do something, you can tolerate it a lot better because you understand they're not trying to be disrespectful. They're truly uncomfortable. All right. So some truth to hold on to. This is our last slide. Healing is your responsibility. This is my second time saying it. And we do not have to blame anyone. This is not a discussion where you can go back and tell the people in your family, I told you so, y'all made me this way, or y'all messed me up. We don't want to blame anybody, and we don't want to blame ourselves either. You can still love your family and tell your truth. Love them absolutely unconditionally. There's space in the world to love on your family and to honor your truth. You don't have to pick a side. Silence does not protect, it actually prolongs. It prolongs pain. It passes it on, and it just lingers and lives in the family for a lot longer than it needs to. You get to be the one who chooses differently. Like, it could start fresh with you. I don't care how old you are listening to me. Maybe you've raised your children. You can start today with having a voice and dealing with some of those things you've been suppressing and hiding in your closet. Um, you come from a line of survivals. I think that's very validating. We're very resilient. We can bounce back. We can learn new things. So the ability to bounce back and correct a way of being is within all of us. Speaking truth is not betrayal. You're not betraying anyone. Breaking the cycle is a form of love and self-care. Self-care is more than a massage or a pedicure. Like, stopping these patterns from happening is the greatest form of self-love and self-care. You deserve a life that doesn't require pretending. It's time to stop pretending. Be honest with yourself. You are not well. Your childhood is kicking your behind. The family that you come from is on your last nerves. You can stop pretending. You can be honest. Tell somebody, tell a therapist, tell a trusted friend. You're sick of them, and get some support and unlearn and relearn and do the work you need to get better. So, as always, I have true or false because I want to check your understanding. Silence in families often began as a cultural survival strategy. If it's true, put a T in the comment. If it's false, put an F in the comment. It is true. Thank you. The next one, there's never anything positive about choosing silence. That is false. There has been some good that have come from silence. Hence why we did it as a group of people surviving. The long-term impact of silence often shows up and future generations as voicelessness, internalized pain, and dysfunctional patterns. True or false? That one is true. Inaction in the face of abuse or dysfunction is not the same as being silent. That is actually false. It is the same. Not acting in silence is the same in the face of abuse or dysfunction. Speaking truth about family trauma is the same as dishonoring or disrespecting your family. Is that true or false? Yes, that one is false. Children learn to use their voice when we model truth, accountability, and emotional safety at home. Is that one true or false? That is true. And teaching children to be respectful means they shouldn't disagree or express strong emotions. That one is false. So I do see there's a comment. It says, I think it has to do with the parent thinking how it makes them look if the child doesn't say hi or hug. That is very true. Sometimes how we parent has more to do with how we look and feel than what's actually good for our child. That is very true. So that concludes my little nuggets for tonight. It's time for some questions, thoughts, or feedback. Thank you guys for your attention. And I'm all ears for your questions if you have any more outside of what you already shared earlier or what the comments that you put in the chat.
So one of the questions that we got here says, how do I help my child when it's hard for me because I haven't dealt with my childhood trauma?
I think the answer is in the question because I haven't dealt with my childhood trauma. I would say step one is to deal with the childhood trauma.
Okay. Another question. Another question or statement says, in my life, when I spoke on situations and circumstances, I became the problem, not the actual issue.
That's that projection I was talking about. The thing you were talking about was, I'm imagining, so painful for the listener that they made you the problem. You became the punching bag instead of actually dealing with the real issue. And that is also one of those survival strategies. We don't want to deal with the elephant in the room, but we can beat up everything else that's less threatening. It's a defense mechanism where you projection is beating up the less threatening thing in the room because of the bigger thing that's in the room. So unfortunately, whomever you were dealing with, they were defending themselves against a reality that probably was too painful to deal with. It was easier to beat you up than to tackle the issue.
Another one says, due to childhood trauma, I don't like to go around certain family members, and then I get made to look at as the villain because I don't come around.
My question is, are you a villain because you don't feel safe going around family members when you have trauma, legitimate reasons to stay away? You are not a villain. And I hope you don't internalize that and believe that. Yeah, you're not the villain. Yes. So just try to believe that. And I don't know, maybe since you asked the question, I'm guessing you feel guilty maybe by it or ashamed. And I guess if that is the case, then I have to ask you, do you believe them when they say that?
And it added, they don't know of the situation that happened to me, but for my safety, because of when it happened, I just choose not to go around. So how can I combat the feeling of letting my family down by not being present?
Okay. So you do feel guilty because you feel like you're letting your family down. I think you're dealing with the reality versus your feeling versus your thought, kind of combing through that. So really you're feeling sad because you want to be around your family. Um, And you're also feeling sad because of the situation. You're having the thought that maybe, I don't know what your thought is, but maybe your thought is, I'm a bad family member because I'm not going around my family. I would just say reframe that. Reframe some of your thinking. um, Thoughts are stories we tell ourselves about what's happening in our lives. So are you staying away from family, or are you just trying to protect yourself because of trauma? And just listening to you, I think I want to validate you. You're just trying to protect yourself from the trauma that you experience. If you are ready to deal with that trauma, really understand, um, I don't want to say why it happened, but what were the circumstances leading up to how it happened to you, processing it and reprocessing it, and maybe finding a balance between protecting yourself but still going around family. So maybe it's certain family members you can go around. Maybe instead of staying away from all of them, maybe you only stay away from certain ones. And I think that's a nice balance. So that way you get to be around family, but you get to honor your trauma, and you don't have to be all or nothing. So just really reflect on, well, who are those family members where I do feel okay with, and spend time with them.
Okay. This next one says, well, we got two. How do you deal with the childhood trauma that came from an older sibling?
Childhood trauma that came from an older sibling. That's kind of broad, but I would imagine that you're still in connection with this sibling, so it makes it hard maybe. Like you would do any other trauma, reprocessing it, trying to understand the realities of it, look at some of the stories you're telling yourself about the trauma, try to reframe it, and then think about how it's currently impacting you. How is it impacting you? What are your feelings? How do you show up when you're in spaces with this sibling? Are you avoiding this sibling? What is the relationship like with this sibling? Have you ever had a conversation with this sibling about the circumstances? If not, would you like to have a conversation with them? Um, like the situation wasn't your fault, but the healing is your fault. Are you ready to heal from it? Are you ready to face it? Are you ready to speak out loud to those things that are in your closet? And if so, it might be time to do it with a therapist. Maybe it's something you can maybe handle on your own. Maybe talk to the sibling. Um, but it's another human being involved, so they may not be open and may not be ready. That's another thing to consider. But process it like you would any other trauma. Um, do it with some support.
Okay. And the last question is for us. It says, what family trauma have you all been through that you have had to adjust to?
Mm. Woo! Family trauma that I have had to adjust to. I have so many that I could share. I'm trying to figure out which one to share. Um, Family trauma that I have had to adjust to. I will go with well, I kind of already talked about my fatherlessness and how it has um showed up as fear of rejection or abandonment. But I've had to adjust to how I deal have dealt with in the past with romantic relationships. Oftentimes the very first feelings of love and attachment didn't come from a dad. Some of my first feelings of love, romantic love, came from boyfriends, throughout college and growing up. So I have had to adjust to being okay with people leaving me. I've had to adjust. So now I have this little thing that I say to myself: people have the right to leave me. And here's the thing: when you have a fear of rejection and abandonment, sometimes it's not even that people are actually leaving you. Sometimes it feels like they're leaving you. So I've had to adjust to the realization that sometimes people aren't leaving me, but um, not showing up for me the way I want you to show up feels like leaving me. Not doing what you say you're going to do. So lying um, feels like abandonment. So I've had to adjust to the realization that I'm hypersensitive to things that feel like rejection, and really be aware of when I'm doing it and tell myself, Janae, that's not actually rejection. It's just your sensitivity to rejection. They just didn't tell you all the details. They didn't leave them out because they don't care about you and they don't love you. It is simply because a human error. So that's my spill.
I would say for me, it would be feeling safe, because early on there's moments that I didn't feel safe. So having the point now and growing at times that I would always protect myself or keep myself in a place of, oh, I got to keep me safe first. And now I realize that everybody's not, some people don't know that you don't feel safe. And so how can they keep you safe if they don't know, or if you haven't expressed certain things to total? And so I think, like Janae said earlier, using your voice, as we used to say, your pin code, because your voice is an access point, right? So if nobody knows what it is that's going on in your heart, your mind, or your surroundings, or how you feel, how can you gain access to freedom from that if you won't open up? And so I use my voice. I talk about everything, now. And like she said, everybody's not ready for that. Everybody doesn't want to hear that, depending on what the conversation is. But I free myself to give myself the space to get it out. And what happens after that is, between the person I had it with, the conversation. And that has been very helpful for me. But that was our last question there, Janae. So, y'all, I hope y'all got some valuable tools, nuggets tonight. If you did, just put a hand clap, a heart, whatever resonates with you. I learned some stuff. Look, y'all, I got checked on some stuff too. Cause I was like, yeah, I might have did that a couple of times. Y'all, I'm telling you, it's so good when you can see yourself and you can just be like, huh, yeah, man, I still got some things to work on. Why? Because this is to help us all. It's not just to give a presentation or whatever. We want you to be benefited from it. So that brings us to the closing of this segment. Next month, our segment is talking about how to deal with your suffering. So it's going to be good. So y'all get ready. Y'all get your questions ready. How to deal with your suffering. What's causing your suffering? Do you know what makes you suffer? I want y'all to think on that until the next time. But Janae, we appreciate you as always, y'all. It's the brother sister duo, bridging the church and the couch. I hope your couch is big enough to handle the weight of whatever it is that you have. But y'all, as always, if you want to sew into Therapy Tuesday, you can go to our Givelify or our Cash App. So it doesn't mean you don't love God. It doesn't mean you don't have the Holy Spirit. It doesn't mean that Jesus is in your heart. Yep, we know Resurrection Sunday just passed. So guess what? We still got some things we got to get up from. There's still some things we got to leave behind, and we got to grow. So I want y'all to grow. I want y'all to be whole. I want you to be happy. Matter of fact, I want you to live your best life. So help us, help others, but most of all, help yourself. So before we leave, I'm just gonna pray over you, send you on your way, y'all. Cause it was a good night. I hope y'all got something. I got something. If you didn't, it's your fault. Go back, watch the replay, cause you can get something. If you was driving, you weren't able to take notes. Go back. You might hear something that you didn't hear the first time. But Father, we just thank you for tonight. God, I thank you for everybody under the sound of my voice that listening, that was in tune. Father, that you would just bring complete healing to their childhood, to their pain, God, to their trauma. Father, I thank you that they will have healthy relationships with their spouses, with their partners, with their children, Father, with strangers. God, I thank you for complete wholeness taking over them right now in the mighty name of Jesus. Father, cover them and shield them. But Father, most of all, allow them to release the things that have kept them paralyzed. Father, I thank you for doing magnificent things in their lives. Father, allow them to be elevated to the place you have called them to. In Jesus Christ's mighty name, amen. Amen, amen. I love you. I love you. Y'all join us on Thursday for Bible study. We're going to continue our series, The Power of Your Release, as well as my men. If you know some brothers that want to collab, get together. We have a men's prayer at 6 a.m. in the morning. Y'all, we got some big things coming up. Just watch. Also, hey, y'all want to support the merch? Go to the website, lfrchurch.org. Go to shop. You can get Therapy Tuesday gear. So, y'all, we about to come up with some new things, but it's all about you. We love you. We love you. We love you. God bless you. Have a great night.